Good noon, and we are meeting once again to talk about reading comprehension. So, you are watching last lap to Maharashtra MBA CET rather, for 2023, and today we plan to talk about reading comprehension. So, you are on BYJU'S Exam Prep channel dedicated to your success as an MBA aspirant. I am Vikrant Kathuria, and this is our agenda of the day. I am going to focus on a singular objective, and that is to help you deal with the reading comprehension segment of the exam more effectively by reviewing the reading techniques and our approach to the passage. Apart from it, when we sit down and solve passages, work on questions, we'll also go ahead and talk about eliminating options. So, before we dive into passages, here are some key things, key factors, key elements that I want to talk about. And that is, what kind of reading comprehension section or segment should we expect in the exam? So, the easiest way of doing that is to look at the past. So, if I look at the 22 paper, you'd realize that there is no discernible pattern there. So, normally when an exam is conducted across different slots, you'd see that the examiner makes it or puts it some effort to keep the composition the same. Maharashtra CET does not belong to that school of thought apparently. So, there was no fixed pattern. Let me take you through the passages asked in each one of those three slots nonetheless. So, in slot 1, we had 22 questions spread across 7 to 8 passages. Now, some of those passages were really small. In fact, you could have thought of them as just a paragraph, whereas some were lengthy. And normally, when the length increases, the number of questions that the passage carries also goes up. Not in Maharashtra CET last year. Even the lengthier passages ended up getting only 2 to 3 questions, which means that passage selection became very important for us in the last year exam, at least in slot 1. And the overall difficulty level was easy to difficult. Then we had this slot 2 with just 3 passages instead of 7 or 8 passages, right? And these passages were on the kind of areas that you typically expect even in the CAT. So you notice a passage on history, a passage on economics, a passage on technology, just the kind of subject matters that we deal with in the CAT. However, the level of difficulty was moderate as opposed to being easy to difficult. So when I say easy to difficult, some passages were easy, some were really difficult. Here, all across, it was more or less moderate. And in slot 3, we had even fewer RC questions, just 15 of them spread over 2 passages. One of those passages had, would you believe it, 10 questions. The difficulty level was moderate. So, we cannot really be very confident about what we will encounter in the exam tomorrow and a day after, but this is what it is. Okay. Then who all are saying good afternoon Vaishnavi, kal exam hai, dar lag raha hai. Koi baat nahi. Even the best of the players have some butterflies in their stomach before they go into the ground for their match, right? We all have butterflies in the stomach. The key is to learn to make them fly in formation so that it helps us. So a bit of anxiety, a bit of stress is actually good for us. Then what else? नशा मुक्ति केंद्र बोल रहा है भाई डरो मत, तो उसके बाद तो डरने की बात है ही नहीं, राइट? और गिरीश की बात ज्यादा ध्यान से नहीं सुनेंगे हम, क्योंकि हमें काफी कुछ आता ही होगा, ऐसे कैसे नहीं आएगा हमें। और आरसी में कैसे नहीं आ सकता यार? आरसी में तो वही पैसेज है, वही क्वेश्चंस है, और क्वेश्चंस के आंसर्स कहाँ है? वही पैसेज में, तो अपने को कैसे नहीं आएगा? चमकेगा आंसर अपने को। Okay, so let us see. Khushbu, I am agnostic to that. Give me whatever you want to in English. I've become equally good at all of these and I just welcome it. It doesn't matter much. It's only for people who have prepared selectively that it becomes an issue. Otherwise, RC kam hai, zyada hai, kya fark padta hai? Okay, so how should we approach reading comprehension section in Maharashtra CET exam tomorrow and a day after? Very easy, very simple. There is no single best strategy. I cannot tell you that, okay, go ahead and do this. That won't work. And that is because all of us have different competencies, different journey of life, making us good at different things, different areas. So my advice is that go there, look at the paper, look at the kind of passages that are given to you, and then decide on how to approach. So in other words, here is my triad. Remain flexible, read the situation. Passages are easy or difficult, lengthy or not so lengthy, questions are direct or indirect, and then decide on your approach, your strategy accordingly at that moment of time. Then, oh Girish, thanks a lot, man. Thank you. हर्ष ऐसा कुछ नहीं है यार. There is no standard formula where I can tell you that this slot is easier or that one is easier. At the end of the day, you have a slot assigned to you. That slot will have an exam. You need to go ahead and perform your best within that slot. So here is the 3-step approach that I generally follow. Step 1 is where I scan, not read, I scan the passages or at times even the questions when we have a fairly large number of questions after a passage. And then step 2, read the passage. Step 3, attempt the questions. Okay, so let's dive deeper into step 1. So when I say scan the passage, what do? I essentially try to figure out the subject matter of the passage, and in some cases even the type of questions asked. So I personally no longer do that because as I said, I've become equally good at all the questions. It does not matter much to me. But if you have some preferences, if you have some strengths, some weaknesses, then this can be a useful exercise. So when I say subject matter of the passage, what do? I basically read the first line of every paragraph. My whole purpose is to see which area the passage belongs to and whether I am comfortable with that area or not. So form a rough idea of that overall difficulty level and do this entire process in under 20 seconds. It's absolutely feasible. It's absolutely doable. Okay. Ooh, Atrangi, man, thanks a lot, yaar. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Akku, that depends on whether you have a Maharashtra domicile or not. Okay, so that's your step 1. Read the first line, figure out the subject matter and how comfortable you are with that subject matter along with the question types and whether those question types are easy for you or difficult for you. After that, start reading the passage where the goal is to read it quickly to generate an overview. And when I say quickly, I'm saying that you would not like to spend more than 2 to 3 minutes given for around say a 600 word passage. Do not spend more than this time. In case the passage is longer, of course, the limit will go up. If it is smaller, you would of course adjust it accordingly. And finally, answer the questions, where we primarily work by eliminating all of those options which are irrelevant. So typically, it'll be easy for us to rule out a couple of options and then you can dig deeper and if needed, refer to the relevant part of the passage to answer your question. Personally, I do that a lot and that is why I rely a lot on generating that mental overview. Okay? कौन क्या इग्नोर हो रहा है भाई? नशा मुक्ति केंद्र, कौन सा सवाल रह गया मेरे से? अकॉर्डिंग टू यू मोर आर, अबे कर तो दिया था खुशबू के सवाल का जवाब, के फर्क नहीं पड़ता उससे, क्या बात कर रहे हो? Yes, absolutely, Girish, absolutely. So now that we have revised the approach, let us sit down and solve a couple of RC passages where I will try to keep the level consistent with the exam. So here is your first passage on the screen. I would call this passage moderate to difficult and it is consistent with the difficulty level given the slot 1 last year. Okay, so are you ready? Shall we start? Shuru kare. Oh, people have started discussing other things very soon, huh? But nonetheless, let us start with our passage 1. The moment you are done reading the passage on the screen, drop a quick read it or yes or thumbs up in the comment box so that I can take you over to the next slide. Okay, so there you go. First passage on the screen. Let's start. Khushbu, what do you mean by personal questions here? Pratik, RC, all the answers are in the passage. So as long as you are able to understand the passage, I'm very sure you'd be able to answer all the questions correctly. Man, okay, so guys, let me know once you've read it. Drop in a quick yes. Okay, they're reasoning based questions. Inferences are reasoning based questions. We should have some such questions here today. And I can talk about this in greater detail when we see them. Okay, done. So here is the next paragraph. Okay, fantastic. That was really fast. Okay, so taking you over to the next paragraph then. Ooh, lot of words, huh? Utility, psychological egoism, ethical egoism. Man. Okay, guys, let me know when once you are done with this. Fantastic, Taji. That's quick. 5 seconds, and I'll take you over to the next slide. Okay, fantastic, guys. I'm glad that all of us have read it. Now, quickly tell me whether you found the passage easy or difficult. Just drop in an E or a D in the comment box and I'll know. Come on, tell me. Easy or difficult, guys? What do you think? So easy or difficult? Easy or difficult? Oh, difficult. Okay. So you realize a lot of us, when it comes to passages based on philosophy, because we've not read a lot of it, because we are not very familiar, we can at times struggle with it. So let me take you through some of the key things that are mentioned in this passage so that when you approach the questions, you find the going easy. So taking you back to the very first slide. So notice Jeremy Bentham was influenced both by Hobbes's account of human nature and Hume's account of social utility. Okay, a lot of us are also writing M, moderate. That's interesting. So, see, so Jeremy Bentham is a philosopher. The first line says he was influenced by Hobbes' account of human nature. So, what is the Hobbes' account of human nature? Yeah, Hobbes basically said that very famous quote by him that life of a man is a continuous search for power after power which stops only with his death. So humans just want power. Okay. Now, and that power can be physical, economic, political, or any other sort of power. And why do human beings seek power? Because power is the way to pleasure and we all seek pleasure. So here's a technical expression thrown in, and that is RCM. So Hobbes said that whenever we want to understand something, we should use resolutive composite method, which basically means that you divide something into smaller and smaller parts until you reach the smallest part. Understand that smallest part to understand the whole. So for instance, Hobbes said that if you want to understand politics, break it down. You need to study humans. But then you can break humans down further. Human beings are basically driven by their mind, their brain. So go down to that basic particle of the brain and you would see that the basic particles of our brain are constantly in motion. They either want to take us towards pleasure or they want us to move away from pain. So because pleasure can be sought through power, human beings consistently, continuously seek power. Okay, and then you have David Hume's account of social utility. Right. So David Hume basically said that we are more influenced by emotions than we are by reasons. So according to him, reason is the slave of passion. Reason is junior to emotion, which is a little ironic because we in our classes talk so much about reasoning, and then you have this principle of utility. So principle of utility says that actions are to be judged by their consequences, or not even consequences. The actions are to be judged by their usefulness, their tendency to produce benefit or advantage or pleasure. So we basically think that, okay, Jeremy Bentham was influenced by these two guys who essentially said that human beings seek pleasure and whatever they do should be measured by its usefulness in terms of producing pleasure. So that's what we basically have. Yet he also promulgated the principle of utility. Okay. And then if you look at the next paragraph, it says that, oh, there is an incompatibility with psychological egoism. Psychological egoism suggests that all behavior of a human being is motivated by self-interest. Whatever we do it out of selfish nature. We just look for our own benefit. So that rightness. So he says on one hand, we are looking at overall happiness, but then there is a problem. Human beings would prefer their own self-interest over overall happiness, and therefore there is a conflict here. And in fact, it also has some of these other things. Let's just look at it. So this slide will suffice. If I look at the next one, he thought that he could reconcile, but then gradually he realized that, okay, this is something that cannot be reconciled. Okay, and finally we have this paragraph. And there are a couple of really unique terms used here. Ethical egoism, psychological egoism. So psychological egoism says human beings can only act in their self-interest. Ethical egoism says human beings can act independently of their self-interest. It is just that they ought to act in their self-interest. Not that self-interest limits them, but they ought to act in their self-interest. So once you know these things, I think chances are that you'd understand it well. So this is basically all about Bentham and his derivation of the principle of utility along with certain challenges that he faced. So he basically went on to apply the principles of pain and pleasure to governments along with people. And there is a comparison between Hobbes's account and Hume's account of certain areas. Okay, so here is your first, okay, so here is your first question of this particular passage. What's your answer? The moment I get 5 answers, I'll start my discussion. So the passage is chiefly concerned with what? Hmm. So what's your take, guys? What's your answer for this? Okay, loads and loads of A's, absolutely. So let's see which are easy to eliminate. Character versus act or action evaluation. Not, it was mentioned in only one paragraph. It is definitely not the main idea. So let's rule it out. Then D, the clash of utility with psychological egoism. Once again, something that was given in one paragraph, and then there was another paragraph which also talked about psychological egoism versus ethical egoism. So definitely not the main idea. Let's rule it out. E says the harmony between utility and character. This in fact contradicts the passage, so we can once again eliminate it. So it's all about A and C. Now, you know what I do in main idea questions. In order to eliminate the two close answer choices, I prefer using the 180-degree approach. Come to think of it, if I give you A as a topic, and then I say that, okay, write an essay on this. You'll talk about Bentham's philosophy, and then you talk about which components have been borrowed from Hobbes, which components have been borrowed from Hume, right? And that's going to be the focus of the entire passage. But this passage is not limited to it. There are 2 paragraphs, first and last, that definitely talk about it. But then they also tell you how Bentham went beyond these two. And in fact, in the last paragraph, it also says how Bentham differs from Hobbes. Hobbes weighs character, Bentham looks at just the action. So you notice that very key crucial difference. So it is not the entire focus. The focus is basically on how he used uh, Hobbes and Hume's philosophies and applied it to developing utility. That's in fact mentioned in the very first paragraph. And therefore, in this particular question, our best answer is C. So 180-degree, guys, use A and C as your essay topics and see which one of the two takes you closer to the passage that was given to you. So A and C were definitely tricky, but it was not all about how Bentham was influenced. It was basically about how Bentham arrived at his principle of utility. In that journey, you can definitely talk about the influences that he had from other philosophers. Okay, so question number 2 on your screen. Once again, I'm going to give you 5 answers. And the moment I have 5 answers, I'll start the discussion. और एक बार में एक ही आंसर भेजो यार, मल्टीपल आंसर भेज के कंफ्यूज कर रहे हो तुम मुझे. I'm still waiting for an answer. Okay, so I have two answers so far, Akshay and G's OP. What else? Second paragraph, guys, second paragraph. If you refer to the second paragraph, you will actually get A as your answer. So why was it incompatible? Dude, come to think of it, psychological egoism says a human being can only act in self-interest, whereas principle of utility was look at the usefulness of an action and choose those that are best for the society. But the incompatibility is what is best for the society may not be best for a particular individual in that situation, and thus he may not act in that larger interest of the society. Second paragraph, that is what makes A the right answer choice for us. So A it is. If you look at the others, let's just quickly see. B says the principle of utility evaluates character, while psychological egoism was act evaluation. No, so when you look at this particular part, it is not even mentioned with reference to psychological egoism. So not there in the passage, irrelevant. C, psychological egoism stands for overall happiness of the majority. No, that contradicts what the passage stands for. D, psychological egoism is empirically proven to be true. Once again, irrelevant, not mentioned in the passage. And E, cycle is while the principle is not, once again. So you notice B, D and E are not even mentioned in the passage, whereas C contradicts the passage, and that definitely helps us arrive at A as our answer. And with that, let's dive into our next question. Question number 3. The fundamental principle behind the principle of utility is that. We've already talked about principle of utility twice. I hope that you'd be able to get it right this time around. Okay, G's OP has once again answered really very fast. Ritik has also shared his answer. G's OP, is A consistent with the principle of utility? Is it what drives principle of utility, that men seek pleasure and the avoidance of pain? Okay, so let's start. The correct answer here is option A. If you look at the rest of these, actions that promote happiness or pleasure are to be promoted by whom? The passage is silent on it. Actions that result in unhappiness should not be approved. Now you notice B and C, if you choose any one of these, you'd have to pick up the other one as well though. So that was a clue that could have helped you rule out B and C both. An individual's well-being is more important than overall being. Well, that is true for psychological egoism, not for the principle of utility. So D is also eliminated. E, actions that result in unhappiness should be approved. Once again, not consistent, not a defining characteristic of the principle of utility. So if I look at B, C, D, E, two of these, B and E, are not even there in the passage. They are irrelevant or contradictory. And between C and D, if you see, D is once again incorrect, because that's a characteristic of psychological egoism, and C was not mentioned as a driving force behind the principle of utility. And therefore, that is also eliminated. And that is why we are left with option A. If you refer to the passage, you can take your seeker back to the right place, look at it again, and I'm sure it will make a lot more sense. Okay, here is your fourth question. You remember tone-based questions. So what is the tone of the passage? Go ahead, share your answer with me, and then we'll see. Okay. So I have my 5 answers and you're absolutely right. The correct answer is argumentative. Now see, in this passage, the author has taken a stance. Therefore, informative can be eliminated. What is melancholic? What do we mean by melancholic? Melancholic basically means sad or depressing, definitely not the tone that the author has. So let's rule it out. So that leaves you with D and E. Facetious basically means flippant. Okay, not taking an issue seriously. So is the author being unduly light-hearted? No. So we can rule that out as well. And what is sardonic? Sardonic is a fairly negative word. So sardonic as a word basically means something that is derisive, something that is mocking, where you make fun of somebody in a harsh, scornful manner. So is the author making fun of anyone here? Nope. So even he can be ruled out. So because he has shared his opinion and has overall been not exactly negative or mocking, we can very safely choose B as our answer. So argumentative it is. Fair enough. And with that, now let us dive into our next passage. So ready for it? So Khushbu, I've already shared the meanings of C, D and E. So I hope you'd be able to retain these meanings so that in case you encounter any of these in the exams, you should be in a position to answer. Okay, here is the next passage on your screen. Let me know the moment you read it. You have the first 2 paragraphs here. It is going to be relatively easier to read as compared to the previous one. Read it? Oh, I think I'm blocking a part of the passage. I did not realize it. Let me just move away a bit. Actually, I think I should make my video a tad bit smaller. Done. Fantastic, guys. Fantastic. So here you go. Done. Fantastic. Chetan, that was fast. Nancy, really quick. Here is the next slide with the next 2 paragraphs. Okay, fantastic. Some of you are reading it really very fast. So here is the last paragraph of the passage for you. Okay, so let's get into the questions. So here is your first question based on this passage. I deliberately skipped the summary, otherwise it would have helped you answer this question. So question number 5 on your screen, what is the main objective of this passage? 5 answers and I will start my discussion. नशा मुक्ति केंद्र says इतना टाइम पास मत करो सर, कल एग्जाम है हमारा. मत कर यार, पैसेज नहीं सॉल्व करना चाहता, मत कर. अब क्या करूं बता. ना करवाऊं पैसेज. ओके, right. So I see that a lot of you have picked up D. Let us see. D says highlight the fact that suspension of India's bankruptcy law caused a decline in the country's growth rate. So if you were to write this particular paragraph, what would you say? You would actually dive deeper into the various reasons why it prevented country from growing. And at the same time, you will not justify its suspension. Remember, there are a couple of places where the author says that, okay, the suspension was perhaps needed. It was perhaps useful, right? So is it mentioned? Yes, but is it the main idea? No, it is mentioned only at one particular place. If I have to look at it, what is the subject matter of this passage? The suspension of India's bankruptcy code or bankruptcy law. What is the author says and what is the author's opinion on this? He says that it should be that, okay, it was suspended for a need, but now it should be reintroduced with along with some modifications. Right? So that's the gist. So D is only one part of it and therefore can be eliminated. The best answer for us here is option B. None of the other ones are actually giving you the main objective or the main idea. Here is the next question. According to the author, why is the reintroduction of the Indian bankruptcy law essential? So kind of an inference based question. Let us see what you offer. Okay, Dinesh. I see that. Atharva, I say easy and difficult can at times be subjective, right? Pavan, absolutely. I can give you suggestion, but then you need to tell me which question type this particular problem happens in. Okay, so here is the correct answer for question number 6, option B. Now, why am I picking up option B, you ask? So see, when you say A, to give lenders adequate power to recover their debts upon default, it is one reason, but it is not the whole sole reason. If you look at it, in the first paragraph and the last paragraph, the author has said that we need it for sustained economic growth. That is the core reason. Now, how will it help you sustain that economic growth? A is given as a reason, C is given as a reason, D is given as a reason to support how it is going to lead to sustained economic growth. But why do we need it? We need it for sustained economic growth, and that is where option B comes closest to the right answer for us. And here comes the next question for you. Question number 7. Please notice that we are using except. So it can help accomplish all of the following except which one? And if you think all of these can be accomplished, of course, you can choose E as your answer. Okay, so let us see. The correct answer here is D. You notice A has been mentioned that if you implement this, firms can be shut down with minimal disturbance. B, definitely there in the very first paragraph. C, definitely mentioned. But D, does the passage talk about reviving falling firms at all? It merely talks about how to shut them down and take out that money and put it into more efficient, more productive pursuits. So passage does not even deal with it, and definitely as a result, in Indian bankruptcy law cannot be linked with D, and that is why D is our answer. Okay, question number 8. So on your screens, what's your take? Which of the following was or were the weaknesses of the insolvency law formulated before IBC? This is what we typically call a fact-based or a direct question. If you can refer to the right part of the passage, you can definitely get this right. Okay, so I have my 5 answers. Now let me take you back to the relevant part of the passage. See this? India historically suffered from a patchwork framework of insolvency laws that either did not give lenders adequate power to recover their debts upon default, so that's one, or only catered to the interests of certain kind of lenders to the exclusion of others. So these are the two weaknesses that are cited in the passage, and if you refer to these two, you'd notice that our answer is going to be A and C. So A talked about law not covering all types of lenders, and C talks about not having enough power to recover your debts, and that is why option D. B was not mentioned as a weakness in the passage. So that's a tough one, buddies. Okay, and because B was not mentioned, option E is also ruled out. So B is mentioned, but elsewhere. It is not mentioned as a weakness of the insolvency laws in existence prior to IBC. And here is your next question. Which of the following views is the author most likely to support? So some of you have said that, okay, how to tackle inference questions. This is an inference question. So in inference questions, go to every answer choice and label it as true, false, or can't say on the basis of the information supplied in the passage. Okay, so do it for this question and then we'll take it to the next level. Okay, so I have one answer, in fact, two answers. Like the 3, 4, and 5. So let's see. So A, the suspension of the bankruptcy law was an incorrect policy decision. See, the author says that it was perhaps needed. So if I were to apply a label, I'll say A is false. How about B? The way in which debt is currently restructured in the country favors inefficient firms. Now the author, just an extension of the point that I made to justify A, the author says that that change was perhaps needed during COVID, which means that there are some companies that benefited from it, that survived because of that particular suspension of IBC. Can we from there generalize that the law is favoring inefficient firms? It could be neutral to it. So therefore, the correct label for B is can't say. C, the Indian bankruptcy law is comprehensive and effective in its present form. False. The author says very explicitly that it should be reintroduced with some modifications, which means that it is not correct in its present form. D, the maximum allocation of capital to the most productive firms will facilitate long-term economic growth. True. That's consistent with the author's view. So now in an inference based question, if you have an answer choice that is true, then you choose that as your answer over false and can't say. So anything which is false or can't say is to be eliminated. Anything which is true can be selected as an answer, and because D is true, E was also automatically eliminated, and therefore D is our answer to this particular question. So just do that. True, false, can't say on the basis of the information supplied in the passage, and you should be through. Abhi, absolutely, yaar, any exam that has reading comprehension is an exam where you'd benefit from this session. So that's about the reading comprehension passages that I've brought for you today. So just a summary. In the exam, pick up those passages that are easy for you, that you find doable, and customize. Remain flexible. Remember, use the strategy for that particular passage and keep practicing. It is a skill. There is no harm in practicing it even tomorrow in the morning. Okay. So if you want to practice more, we have section wise quizzes available on our app. You can go there and attempt it. And let's not forget that we'd have our analysis of the exam, all the 3 slots, immediately afterwards. So please make sure that you do turn up for the analysis of the various slots. So tomorrow we'd have our first session at 2 p.m. Then we'd have our analysis of the second slot at where we'd start at around 3 p.m. and on 26th we'd be analyzing at 8 p.m. Right? So you get the early impression sooner, but then that's the timeline that we are looking at. And in case you are somebody who's starting afresh, we have this special session for you on 4th of April that you can attend. And if you want to be one of these CAT 22 toppers who have succeeded through our program, our batches are open with these fabulous features. You can enroll for these, and to make it easier for you, we also have our scholarship test happening on the 1st of April, right? So make sure that you like this video if it helped you, and subscribe to our channel so that you can follow us so that you get to know about every single session that we bring for you. And those of you writing the exam tomorrow and the day after, all the very best, guys. You have prepared very hard. I am absolutely confident in your abilities. Just go there and ace the exam. And if you have any issue, any question, any concern, do not hesitate in reaching out to us. We will love to help you. Don't forget that we are your strongest supporters, and you'd always find our entire team right behind you in your pursuits. So that's it from me today. All the best for your exam once again. And I look forward to meeting you during the analysis session with your take on how the exam was and how you did in it. Right? Until then, stay safe, stay focused, stay in touch. Have a great day ahead, guys.